Happy Thursday. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple with you here. Husker Online Headlines. Hey, look, we got some new cups. We made some Husker Online Yeti coffee cups. And
is that a coffee cup? Don't you call that something else? Like a, what do you call it?
There
Sean?
is coffee in there, by the way, not a margarita.
Yeah.
Not at 11 a.m. on Thursday. But welcome to Husker Online Headlines. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple. Boy, a lot to get to here as we go through. What's starting off to be a pretty eventful, fun off season with lots of discussion points. And let's start at headline number one, our first discussion point. But before I get to that, make sure you like, follow, subscribe to us here on the Husker Online YouTube page. We also got a great special for Husker Online YouTube viewers. Get 2 months of access to Husker Online for $1. 2 months for $1. You got to use promo code NU1 to take advantage of that promo, Steve Sipple. But let's get into headline number one.
Mm-hmm.
Matt Rhule shed some light on the plan for the quarterback position. And we talked to Matt Rhule almost 40 minutes on Wednesday, kind of breaking down a lot of different topics in the offseason. But the quarterback and the transfer portal is a big one. And look, Matt Rhule made no bones about it. They are going to shop and look in the portal for a quarterback, but it's got to be the right guy. It's got to be the right fit.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's a lot of price tags attached to some of these quarterbacks now that 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I think when Casey Thompson was in the portal, there was NIL elements to it, but think where it's at now compared to say 2 years ago when Nebraska brought in Casey Thompson from Texas.
Well, yeah. And Matt Rhule made some kind of waves nationally yesterday when he said the very top level quarterbacks command $1 million, $1.5 million to $2 million. That took off nationally. It doesn't mean that's what Nebraska is going to pay. But if you go get a top level quarterback from a Power 5 program, top level meaning maybe not even a starter, maybe a guy who was highly recruited.
Will Howard.
Yeah, highly recruited and then had a good career. Yeah, you're going to pay six figures no matter what. Nebraska will pay it. They'll pay it. I don't know that Nebraska could even land someone worth $2.5 million right now. I don't know if they'd pay it. It probably depends on who it is.
Because if there is somebody of that caliber with that market value,
mm-hmm.
there's going to be multiple suitors. Then at that point, you decide who. It's not about the money at that point. The money's there.
The money's there.
You
just got to decide if you want to pay it.
Then for the player making the decision. The player has multiple offers within the ballpark of the market. Then they decide who's the best place to go to.
Yeah, and the place, if it's Nebraska, has to decide if they're willing to participate in that. I'll call it a market. If that particular market, they might not. They might not.
I got the sense yesterday, Matt Rhule, they want to keep developing Heinrich Haarberg and Chubba Purdy in this program. And
he did say that.
They don't want to just get a guy that automatically puts both those kids in the portal. Because I think that's your fear. You go out and get somebody that you don't even know is going to work. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, Haarberg and Purdy are out of here.
It's tricky, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really tricky.
It's a really, really delicate discussion.
It is. It's hard for coaches all over the country. It's hard to keep a stocked quarterback room now because kids are, if it's not, and not all kids, but there's a lot of kids that are just looking at it like if the situation's unfavorable, I'll go somewhere else. All you got to do is look at the stats that ESPN flashed across its ticker yesterday that where 55% in that range, 50+% of the starting quarterbacks in the FBS this year were transfers. 50%. That's up dramatically from 2022, Sean. Double where it was.
Think about Bo Nix. Like he was an Auburn legacy.
Yeah.
And he's got a chance to win the Heisman now at Auburn.
At Oregon.
Or at Oregon.
Right.
And Michael Penix was at Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't even know he battled injuries, but goes out to Washington. He could win the Heisman. I mean,
that's the world. And Rhule, just to be clear, we really have to choose our words carefully when we talk about this, Sean, because it's business. And we're portraying another business that's still pretty new, right? Nebraska's NIL operation. You really have to be in our shoes. You just have to choose your words carefully and not misrepresent the situation. I think what we can say is that Nebraska is obviously open to going into portal for a QB. They're willing to spend a certain amount. I don't know what that amount is. They're also pretty clearly hoping that Harburg and Chuba stay around. Sims, Jeff, Rhule talked about in the past tense for part of his response to a very good question was, what did you learn from the portal recruitment of Jeff Sims? And in that answer, it really sounded like they're moving on. It sounded like that.
But what if Jeff Sims decides to stay and have a reduced agreement with his NIL, because obviously his name, image, and likeness value is not the same as it was the year before. And what if he just says, I'm going to stay here
because he likes it?
And because what kind of suitors would Jeff Sims have?
Not many.
With NIL,
I don't think
with NIL.
Yeah. Or what kind of transfer options would he have? Because he can transfer, because we think he's graduating in December. So he would be free to transfer and play immediately. Now, Sean, again, we could be wrong. It's possible he'd have a list of possibilities to go to.
I don't think he had a list of possibilities out of Georgia Tech.
I know. I don't know about that.
Well, I'm just going off of what I heard from. He had maybe one or two other people on him, but nobody. That stopped the presses.
No, I would just say, listen, let's just be real about this. He threw 6 interceptions in 47 attempts this year. 6 interceptions in 47 attempts. That's remarkable futility. I mean,
in the history of football, that's.
Yeah. If you look at thousands of quarterbacks in college, you won't find that kind of ratio.
This is back to the point. I think what Rhule would love to find is a really, really talented younger quarterback.
Yes.
That is leaving his school for situations and circumstances out of their control. Whether there's a coaching change or maybe another veteran quarterback or two is still there. And they're trying to find somewhere else. And they know that this guy's good. But for whatever reason, the situation he's in is not going to work out.
Didn't work out.
Then you bring that guy here and you keep Chuba, you keep Heinrich, and you keep this new guy, and you have a true battle. That was the one thing about last spring that never happened because of the injury to Casey Thompson, because of the injury to Logan Smothers. And I believe Chuba Purdy, I don't know if he battled a few things.
No, he didn't practice in the spring, Sean.
So Chuba was out in the spring. So there was no battle on the spring ball. And there were 6 scholarship quarterbacks on the roster, and there was nobody to push Jeff Sims.
No,
nobody.
So I think, I do think they'll set it up differently. Now, again, this is all fluid and we don't know yet. The portal officially opens December 4th. There is a situation that exists that would be similar to what occurred at Nebraska last spring. And that is if Nebraska goes in and gets a high profile former starter at a Power 5 school, then it might be similar, but I don't envision that.
At that point, who do those guys stay?
Yeah, those guys mean Harburg and Purdy.
Because Purdy graduates in December. He's eligible to go back in the portal.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good question.
And obviously Harburg, he went 5 and what? Did he go 5-1?
He started 8 games.
The Michigan game. Yeah. The Michigan game. Yeah, he
started 8 games.
He lost the Maryland game, so he went 5-3.
Yeah, 5-3.
5-3 as a starter.
Right.
So you got them all 5 wins.
So I don't think it'll end up being complicated. I think they'll get Harburg and Purdy to stay. Maybe Sims stays. I don't know what kind of role that would be. And then they go get a guy. And they go get at least a guy and maybe 2.
You're listening here to Husker Online Headlines. Before we get into headline number 2, Husker Online Headlines brought to you by Omaha Steaks, and they've got a great special going on. Not only right now do they have 50% off site-wide, by using promo code Husker, we're going to give you another $30 off your order. And Steve, who doesn't love steaks for Christmas? You get a box of bacon wrapped fillets.
Jeez.
Like, honestly, like if I talk to my mom or dad, I'm like, just give me a box of steaks. Like as a grown man, I mean, that is the perfect gift to give somebody. And they have more than steaks though, too. They have chicken, pork items, lots of side items, lots of dessert items. Omaha Steaks, just an unbelievable Nebraska-based company that's worldwide, and they've got a great special right now, 50% off right now, site-wide. Simply use promo code Husker at checkout, and you will get $30 off your order at Omaha Steaks. So take advantage of that. Get the Christmas shopping done. Get some Omaha Steaks for your employees, your friends.
Yeah, your parents.
Your parents. I mean, once again, like
somebody.
Who does not want a box of steaks?
Well, dudes, I mean, you can't go wrong, really. It's a great gift. It's a great gift to give, and it's a great gift to get. And maybe while you're getting gifts for other people, you just sneak yourself a box, Sean.
Well, think about
just
that
get
deal.
your own box.
50% off, and then the promo code Husker gets you $30 more off. So you're going to get like a freezer full of meat for $120. Try to go to Hy-Vee and do that. It ain't happening. All right. We just lost our partnership with Hy-Vee
sponsor, but that's fine.
But we got Omaha Steaks. All right, let's get into headline number 2. What to make of the speculation of Tony White? Mm-hmm. It's silly season, Steve Sipple. It's silly. You wake up. We talked last night. Mm-hmm. I mean, people at USC were ready to have a press conference to hire Tony White. Mm-hmm. This morning, they were still ready. Then an hour later, all of a sudden, it's not happening. That's the type of year we're in right now. Silly season. Lots of rumors, lots of speculation. We know Tony White is not going to get the Syracuse head coach job. That's going to Fran Brown, a Matt Rhule disciple. We know he's not going to get the head coach job at San Diego State. That's going to Sean Lewis, the Colorado offensive coordinator. But the USC defensive coordinator job, White's name began to emerge. But at least as of show taping, it seems like that's already cooled off a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of it. I guess we've had this discussion off air. I don't regard it as a slam dunk that he would even take the job. It's not. Their defense was abysmal this year. I watched, Sean, we were at Michigan State for an early game. It was an 11 a.m. kickoff, right? And I watched Washington just go up and down the field against that defense. And I know what you'll say, and some people say it to me, but USC has talent. No, they didn't have great talent. They had some 4-star guys that were pretty good.
A lot of mercenaries, a lot of
they had some transfers that just weren't very good.
Which is what Matt Rhule doesn't want to do.
Right.
He doesn't want to build a team of mercenaries.
Yeah, I don't want to hear people say, but USC has talent. I didn't see it. They had some guys. Well, I mean, put it this way. Nebraska's defense is better than USC's, and it will be better than USC's this coming year. I guess Tony lived in California for a while. He's not
a long time.
He's not a native, though. He's not a native. He was born in Key West, Florida. I mean, he lived in El Paso. I mean, I just don't see the slam dunk that everybody sees.
Well, he's 40, 46?
44.
44, and he spent over 20 years of his playing career on the West Coast. You go back to his playing time at UCLA, 4 years. Mm-hmm. He coached at UCLA for a year.
Yeah, USC's arch rival.
He was at San Diego State for 9 years. Mm-hmm. And then he was at Arizona State, I believe, for 3 or 4 years. So he does have a track record on the West. And I do think what he did at Nebraska got people's attention. They went from 100th nationally to 14th.
Oh, for sure it got people's attention. I just don't understand why it's an automatic that he would leave Nebraska for USC. I don't regard it that way. And it's not happening. I mean, I think people created this fantasy almost like
the fishbowl.
We don't know, Sean. We can't sit here and say we know he interviewed for that job. I don't think he did. I mean, yeah, it's kind of weird to me how this stuff goes. I don't know that he interviewed for the job.
So Tony Gibson of NC State is now the name being talked about there. I mean, Tony White had about a 24-hour shelf life. Now Tony Gibson
has moved on.
And the thought, at least from the insiders and people on our USC on 3 pages, that an announcement is supposed to be made there during or before the Pac-12 championship game on Friday.
What I'm telling you is Tony's got a good situation at Nebraska. He has stability. And by the way, his entire defensive line's coming back except for Blaise Gunnerson. They're almost the entire 3 deep up front is back. There's a lot. They have 16 returning guys from the 2 deep. He's in a great situation. He's going to get a raise, right? I mean, you almost that we don't know that officially, but wouldn't you expect he's in for a raise?
Oh, no question. I mean, I think, and maybe that's what this is as much about. I mean, Tony White has representation. I'm pretty sure of that. He's on a 3-year, $1 million contract.
Pretty good. Yeah.
So he gets $3 million guaranteed. As a coach, your shelf life in this business is not long.
Get all you can.
You look at Satterfield's a 3-year, $4.2 million guarantee. So how much closer to Satterfield's salary will White be? I think that's the question.
I think he should be on par with it.
Satterfield's 1.4, White's 1.0. Alex Grinch, by the way, the USC defensive coordinator, made 1.8. Now, that's not verified all the way because their contracts aren't made public, but the highest paid coordinators in the game of college football make $2 million.
Yeah, I don't
1.8.
Yeah, I'm not going to spend other people's money.
No.
I don't want to do that. But Tony White I would say after this year would deserve to make something commensurate with Satterfield.
And I would hope Trev Alberts, who just got a pretty new 8-year contract himself, recognizes the importance.
He does. Of course he does.
And he's a defensive guy. So I do think Trev Alberts will understand, like, yeah, we got to take care of Tony White.
Yeah.
And, Matt Rhule is well under his pool number too.
Yeah. See, there you go, Sean. And let's face it, Nebraska is a prestigious institution, as is USC. But Nebraska's prestige doesn't, I wouldn't say it takes a back seat to USC. I wouldn't. I mean, USC, Sean, 7-5 this year.
Well, their stadium was empty at the end of the year.
Right. Tony's got a good deal at Nebraska. So listen, if a head coaching job comes along, the conversation changes. But making a move to USC, I just didn't see it as like, oh, yeah, that's a no-brainer. He's got to go. I do not see it that way.
Think how many good coaches have failed at USC since Pete Carroll.
Absolutely.
I mean, Lane Kiffin, pretty good coach, failed. Steve Sarkisian, proven to be a pretty good coach. He failed. What's the guy that's at Georgia Southern?
Troy Helton.
Todd
Helton.
Clay Helton. A, B, or C.
Yeah, Helton.
Clay Helton.
Just say Helton.
He was a good coach, but he wasn't sexy enough.
No.
He was too.
He had a good record.
Yeah, he was just not cool enough. And Lincoln Riley's cool. He's this hip offensive whisperer for the quarterbacks. But Alex Grinch was a pretty damn good defensive coordinator. Just got fired from there.
I guess he was good. I'm telling you, the defense was lousy. I mean, it was lousy defense. I wish I had the number where they ranked, but it was bad.
When you play a style of offense,
that's another thing.
He plays. It's hard to have good defenses.
Yeah, he didn't get any help. But Grinch really. It was rough. I mean, I saw it firsthand. I'm not speculating. They had a lot of trouble against Washington. I mean, now a lot of people do, but not everybody has that kind of trouble. Washington was scoring virtually at will.
Now, I want to hit on a few other staff notes because we don't really know a couple other things that could happen. Matt Rhule on Wednesday did not want to go into details on where he was at on like any possible moves on his staff, which tells you he's going to make a few things.
It's early, though.
It's early.
I mean, he was talking to us 5 days after the season.
But I think the big one is he tipped his hand a little bit that the plan never was to have Satterfield be the quarterback's coach. They wanted Satterfield to be tight ends and OC.
Right. Interesting.
And then they were going to have a quarterback's coach, which we presume it was maybe Jake Peets. He at least was a candidate for that position.
Maybe.
But they didn't get the guy they wanted for that quarterback's role. So then Satterfield coached quarterbacks. They brought in Bob Wager. We don't need to even get into that, but that obviously didn't work out very well. And now they have an analyst, Josh Martin, coaching the tight ends. They're paying him $150,000 a year. Matt Rhule said, hopefully by next year, analysts will be full-time position coaches legally. So you can have a Josh Martin still make what he makes, and he can still do the same job.
Right.
It's not like, but Josh Martin is not under a coach's contract. He's an employee at Nebraska. Yeah. He's an at-will employee.
So you're just say shift Satterfield to tight ends with his OC role and hire a quarterback's coach. You got to find the right one.
That seems like the logical move. Now,
if you find the right one,
obviously Pete's name will keep getting mentioned, but
won't be. No, don't forget that.
Jeff Nixon, another name to watch.
Yeah, Jeff Nixon. Pete's. I mean, I think Pete's would only come here if he was calling the plays, And there are some guys, and I'm not saying Pete's falls under this category. I'm not saying he doesn't. That there are some guys, Sean, that if they're going to call plays, they want autonomy. They don't want the head coach. Hey, Sean, they don't want the head coach standing on the sideline with a play sheet. They want to do it. And some guys will rule out a job like where the coach is involved, where the head coach is involved. Now, Pete's isn't. I mean, I just don't think Pete's would come to Nebraska to coach quarterbacks.
Jeff Nixon called plays for Rhule.
Yeah, with Nixon, you got to find somebody that's willing just to coach quarterbacks.
Now, Jeff Nixon, explain the connection, because his son, Will Nixon, was a former Husker at one time, but you talked to Jeff Nixon this summer.
Yeah, Nixon was coached. He's coached with Rhule at Carolina. And
Baylor.
He has a high opinion of him. Yeah, Nixon would definitely be a guy that I would think Rhule would look at. I just don't know what Nixon's situation is. So it is, Sean. I don't want to speculate on guys I don't know. I'll just say this: it's got to be the right guy to do it. You just don't bring in a quarterback coach and hope it works. You got to find the right guy.
And Rhule kind of made it feel like, hiring a staff on the fly when you first get here, it's not easy. I mean,
sometimes you got to tinker with it, right?
And things don't go the way you want, and
not always.
And so I think for Matt Rhule, he had to put together a year one staff and do a couple things that weren't probably part of his plan.
Yeah.
And will he get closer to that plan in year two?
Yeah, and we're having a conversation because Nebraska led the country in turnovers, and the quarterbacks were the impetus to that. The three quarterbacks. It happened over. We've talked about this stuff ad nauseum. We don't need to drive it into the ground, but the quarterbacks, Sean, their touchdown to interception ratio was 10-16. 10-16. Okay. The combined completion percentage was 52%. The touchdown to interception ratio was 10-16. 52% completion rate. It's hard to go 500. It's hard to win anything of note with those numbers. So that's why we're having a conversation. It's not unfair to Satterfield. I don't think Satterfield would say it's unfair. The one area where you might say it's unfair is the
injuries.
Personnel wasn't great. Yeah, they didn't have great personnel. So it puts everybody. That's the thing about football. It's why I always say it's why it fascinates me so much, because there's so much interconnectivity. Yeah, the quarterback struggled, but how much of that was because didn't have much to throw to?
Well, and I told you what the Big Ten Freshman of the Year award. There were hardly any freshmen that had big years. Well, Nebraska was relying on freshmen.
Yeah,
to play at receiver.
Relying heavily on them. And by the way, those guys didn't play bad.
Well, no, and they got better each week. But this league, especially with 24-year-old players now, it's not a league for 18-year-olds.
It's not. It's not. You watch the games. We watch every game, every single play. And it's astounding to me.
They're men.
When a team like Northwestern comes in here with no young guys on defense. And then Purdue comes in here and you're like, man, these teams aren't even very good. Purdue's a 4-win team. And look at how they hit you. Look at the hits they put on Heinrich that day. It's largely why Heinrich was ineffective going forward, because he was getting his teeth rattled. Yeah. I mean,
it was cold that day.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, you're 100% right. It's not a freshman league. Now, people are going to say, well, what about this freshman? Yeah, there's always outliers. But tough to play.
But this year, if you look at the history of the Big Ten, one of the least we've never seen this few of freshmen have like big roles. Yeah. And that's redshirt freshmen too, not just true freshmen. Yeah. I mean, the COVID year is real.
It is.
It's changed rosters. It's changed,
made them older.
And it's same in basketball. I mean, look at Hoiberg's team.
Yeah, look at Hoiberg's team. They look like old men. I mean, they have that look, which is great. That's what you want. The older, the better, within reason.
All right. Before we get into headline number 3, Husker Online headlines brought to you by nuts.com. And really excited about this partnership that we formed here with nuts.com. They offer a wide variety of roasted nuts, dried fruits, sweets, pantry staples, you name it. They even have coffee on their website, but tons of great items. And we're getting a new shipment in Friday, by the way, Sip.
Can't get here soon enough, Sean.
And yeah, because honestly, they've sent us like We had like 20 bags, and they're gone.
Yeah, it was embarrassing how quickly we went through them.
Some of the
it was embarrassing.
The bourbon pecans.
Yeah,
and like the cashew. Some of the ones that are
the bourbon.
There
pecans.
you go. The bourbon pecans.
Yeah, there they are.
I mean, those things lasted an hour.
Yeah, it was embarrassing.
It's almost like Robin and you guys hung out to make sure you finished them off.
Yeah, I was just watching you. I mean, to see if you get your big paws in those bags.
Hey, you ripped the bags. At least I didn't rip the bags.
I was excited.
We've got a great special for Husker Online listeners here. Just go to nuts.com/Husker.
I think you should get some of those mini sea salt caramels.
We might. I ordered like this huge holiday basket, and it was 50% off because of Black Friday and the promo codes we had. So we're gonna have like a pallet of nuts.com delivered to this office by Friday. So get excited, Steve Sipple. But
all right, well, this will be fun.
Any order over $29, you'll get free shipping if you just go to nuts.com/Husker, and you'll get a free gift at purchase. So they'll throw in probably an extra bag of cashews or a free gift as well. But check it out, nuts.com. Great products, high quality, premium stuff. Great time to stock up the pantry with the holiday season coming around. Okay, let's take it, Steve Sipple, and do headline number 3. Why Nebraska fans should expect light transfer portal activity.
Interesting.
And I'll start first with the numbers.
Yes, do.
Because you're only allowed 85 scholarship players. We talked about these rosters being older because of the extra COVID year.
Mm-hmm.
We're still operating in a car that has 5 seats, but you're trying to squeeze a 6th butt in there. And it's hard to do.
Yeah.
You've been in a lot of cars, Steve Sipple, probably.
I haven't been in that many cars, but go ahead.
When you were younger.
Yeah.
Where you got to squeeze that 6th person.
Yeah.
And someone, I mean, and that's the COVID year in college football. It's a 5-seat car.
Yeah.
You're trying to get a 6th person on someone's lap.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you love my analogies. That's my COVID roster.
That's a pretty good analogy.
It's not my best.
You've had much better.
But
sometimes they're inappropriate. This one was appropriate at least.
But I did an audit of the numbers based on their guys that we think are coming back, possibly coming back.
Okay.
The guys they have committed, they're roughly around 98 guys on scholarship.
Scholarship players.
98 to 100.
And you're allowed
85. And
there you go.
They are still looking at a high school running back, maybe a high school offensive lineman of Xander Rhule.
And then the running back is
Harris.
No, the kid from Boise State.
Yeah, we just had him in here. Now I'm blanking on the name here.
Anyway, he's a Boise State.
Dylan Riley.
Dylan Riley. We had
Dylan Riley. He's coming back on December 8th. They have 2 visitors next weekend.
Okay.
So those 2 visitors, Xander Rhule and Dylan Riley, both will be here again. But then the portal conversation. Like Matt Rhule said this last year. They took 12 scholarship portal guys. He goes, don't ever expect us to do that again.
12. Which is a reasonable number, by the way. Not unreasonable.
But I think he would rather get his own guys that he identifies with the metrics and the things that he wants and build them up in the program their way to build the culture that they want versus continuing to bring in mercenaries and maybe having them jump over the guys you recruit.
You don't think that. You know that. That's what he has said. That's what they want. He said on Wednesday, Rhule, that he wants to do it the kind of the hard way, the old-fashioned way. Recruit high school
fix.
Right. Recruit high school players, build a really good, solid foundation, and develop those players. And then fill in gaps as needed with the transfer portal, which is the Georgia way. I mean, Georgia does that. You don't see massive turnaround at Georgia. I'm not comparing Nebraska to Georgia, but this is how Rhule wants to do it. It's important that we convey that accurately. He wants to do it what he says the hard way, the more of a traditional way, I would call it.
So I would anticipate like the norm for a Matt Rhule roster, all things normal, would be 3 to 5 portal guys a year, tops.
Yep. Yeah.
Tops.
Yeah.
And I think this year 3 is probably where I lean.
It's a really, really small number. I mean, when you think about it.
Yeah, but you think
compared to last year,
where they've been the last 2 years, 3 years as a program.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a complete fire drill.
It has.
With Scott Frost, fighting to save his job.
Mm-hmm.
They were scrambling to pull bodies from the portal.
Yeah.
Devin Drews and Stephon Wins and
Stop gaps. There was a lot. I mean, they were doing a lot. 12 says a lot. So it's interesting because they had a big recruiting class of 2023, right? What was that number?
So there's, as of right now,
2023
there's 27 scholarship freshmen on the roster.
Okay. And then this year's class of 2024 is 26.
All high school.
Yeah. You see what he's doing here. I mean, he's laying a foundation with these young guys. And
they're all not going to make it.
No, they never do. I mean, but I hope the percentage is higher than it has been.
So think about this. There will be over 50 potentially scholarship players on this roster next year that are freshmen, redshirt freshmen, or some of those guys, like 4 or 5 of those freshmen actually played more than 4 games.
Yeah.
But first and second year players in the program, there will be over 50.
And how many true freshmen played this year? 12, right?
12 saw time.
So 12 saw time. That's a big number.
Yeah, 12 of the 27. Now,
Sean, that is a big number.
Coleman and Lloyd played over 4 games.
Mm-hmm.
Van Poppel, Lenhart, Princewell. So there's 5
that played over 4
in Ovano. So there are 6 guys that played more than 4.
And 12 total.
12 total played.
Big number.
But yeah, what's fascinating, and it's not my job to figure this out, but how are they going to get it to 85? Because you can't just say we're going to put him over to NIL. It doesn't work like that.
Can you do that to a certain degree, though?
You can only do it
with what?
So with walk-ons. So
is that right? You can't put a Bryce Benhart on an NIL?
I don't think so.
Okay. I'm asking.
Once you're under the framework of a scholarship, you're in. I mean,
okay. So
otherwise, everybody in the country with money would just use it to get extra scholarship players.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking it might happen. But anyway, so people understand what I'm talking about. Not everybody follows this stuff every day. When I say can't they just NIL Bryce Benhart, I mean literally just take him off of scholarship and pay him the money commensurate to a scholarship or much more.
Well, you have to factor when they do that. They have to factor in tuition, books, stipend, plus NIL payment, then figure out what income taxes are, and payroll taxes.
Yeah.
Deduct that add that to the number so the number equals what it would have been. I mean,
okay. And to be clear, that's not happening.
Well, it can only happen
for walk-ons.
Alex Bullock can go back off, and he would be on a situation like that.
Okay, because he had been a walk-on, right?
Right. So walk-ons that go on, they can go on 1-year agreements. But anybody that signs a 4-year tender, like they're in that.
They're in it. Yeah,
it's not a waiver deal where you can just.
It's interesting. So it's very we're very odd times.
There's definitely a lot of funny math you have to do to figure this out.
So, but getting back to the, I mean, if I were a fan, I would counsel fans, don't obsess over this topic. It'll work out. It always does. When does it not? When have you ever seen it?
It has to work out.
Yeah. When have you ever seen the headline OU or school X
is it
way over? Yeah. Scholarship will be penalized with a loss or something. I mean, it just never happens. It always works out. I wouldn't spend a lot of time gnashing your teeth over this.
Well, Matt Rhule has until August to do this. It's not like they have to be down to 85 at Christmas.
There's something else that we should mention here, and it's favorable to Nebraska. You don't see a rush of Nebraska guys going into the portal. Why? Because they're well taken care of.
NIL.
NIL and just generally treated well at Nebraska.
And there's people on other message boards and talk shows that try to paint this picture that the NIL is healthy within the roster and the framework.
If it weren't healthy, there would be more players leaving. There's not an exodus. How many players do you think will jump into the portal off Nebraska's current roster? Estimate. 3,
just a
maybe
handful of guys that would make sense.
Yeah.
And I say this, and it could easily still happen, but I don't expect like an Ernest Hausman type thing right now.
You always got to be
leery though.
Yeah, because kids leave for sometimes reasons that don't have anything to do with their happiness. It might be some circumstance could be a girlfriend, could be a family member's sickness, could be a lot of different things. But what I'm trying to convey to people, Sean, is You're seeing 6-year guys come back for a reason. You're seeing Ty Robinson, Ramir Johnson come back for a reason. Why? Because it's a good place. They feel good here. They're not looking to leave. And as you said, they're getting paid. They're making a pretty good living playing. I can say that, right? They're making a pretty good living playing football for Nebraska.
No doubt. And, I think another thing too, you look at some of these positions are like defensive back. I mean, there's currently 8 true freshman scholarship defensive backs. They signed, and they've got 7 more coming in.
I think they got a lot.
So there's going to be, because only Ethan Nation played more than 4 games. There's going to be 14 scholarship redshirt freshmen and true freshman defensive backs. I don't know.
I've never seen that.
I mean, that's more scholarship players than Fred Hoiberg has.
Yeah,
That's one position.
Yeah, one position group. Yeah,
that's when you put it in those. I mean, that's more scholarships than like the softball team has, and we're just talking about the secondary.
The secondary.
So they've got a few numbers crunches, but again, they'll figure it out. I'm not going to sit here and freak out about it.
No, there's no reason to.
All right, before we get to headline number 4, Husker Online headlines brought to you by Home Field Apparel. When attending these Nebraska games from home, you want to look good, get some new gear, freshen things up. It's basketball season. We got the volleyball NCAA tournament going up. You got Christmas coming up as well. No better website to check out than Home Field Apparel. All their stuff is so unique and cool. They got a lot of basketball items, volleyball, football, you name it. Get a fresh looking set of gear, different than what you're going to find at the bigger box stores around town. Because you don't want to have on the same shirt that everyone's wearing to the game. You want to look a little different. You want to look like Steve Sipple.
I don't know about that, but I think people get your point.
But you go to homefieldapparel.com, promo code Huskers23 will get you 15% off. That's homefieldapparel.com, promo code Huskers23 to take advantage of this special for our Husker Online listeners and viewers. Make sure you check out Home Field Apparel. Thank you again to Home Field. All right, let's get into headline number 4. Is Michigan set to steamroll into the college football playoff despite the FBI and the NCAA probes? What a year it's been for Jim Harbaugh and the Wolverines.
I don't know what to say sometimes. I was so impressed with Michigan and the way it acquitted itself in the game, which was obviously a tough game. Ohio State was really formidable this year. Better defense. They had Travion Henderson available. They had a good backup running back. But Michigan found a way. And they enter this thing undefeated. And doing this while Harbaugh didn't coach 6 games. Jim Harbaugh, watching the Ohio State game from his home. Not only that, Sean, they lose Zach Zinner in the third quarter. Zach Zinner, as you know, is their All-American guard.
And he's out for the playoffs.
He's out. He broke bones in his leg.
He might win the Outland.
Yeah. So they beat Ohio State without their head coach, the Wolverines, without Zach Zinner. I mean, you have no idea, I don't think, because you don't think about it. But if you're an Ohio State fan, this is a long year now, because all year you got to listen to this. You lost to Michigan when they didn't have their head coach and they lost their guard, their All-American guard. You couldn't beat them then.
How much does this remind you of like Osborne versus Switzer, where like
a lot?
Ryan Day is like Osborne,
yeah,
and Harbaugh's Switzer.
Yeah, it's kind of like that.
Because Ryan Day is he does
buy the book, but he's a buy the book guy.
Pretty focused, yeah. And Harbaugh's kind of loosey goosey and does his thing, and they can't figure it out there. They might be the second or third best team in the country, but they're not going to get a chance.
You're right.
They're not going to get a chance to this year.
No, they're not going to.
They should have beat Georgia last year in the playoffs.
No, they're this close. They're just so close. This year, I just don't think Kyle McCord was ready to go to Ann Arbor and win a game. The Ohio State quarterback. I said that going in. What'd he do? Threw an early interception. It really hurt him.
And a late pick.
And then a late pick. I just don't think they had the quarterback that was ready to go win in Ann Arbor, but he wasn't far away. That was a close game. I will tell you one thing, Sean. I hope as long as I work for you, you'll always make sure I'm able to watch this game. It is the sporting event on the calendar that I enjoy more than anything.
It's the closest thing to probably what you grew up with in Nebraska, Oklahoma.
Yeah. I can't get enough of it. I mean, I watched the game twice. I watched it live and I watched it yesterday. I mean, it's an incredible thing to watch.
I love that it's an 11:15 kickoff.
Yeah, I do too.
Because then you have you still kind of have a day. Like 2:30 is a great kickoff time. Don't get me wrong, but I love that it was an 11:15 kick. It was just perfect.
Yeah, Michigan. Hey, they're going to be really tough to deal with for anybody. Anybody that, if they would, for instance, play Washington, I'd love Michigan to beat Washington, because I don't think that Washington could hold up to Michigan's physicality. Sean, Florida State, it's kind of the same thing.
It's looking like Michigan versus the Pac-12 champion is going to be the 2-3 game, which would be kind of the last true Rose Bowl.
It would be beautiful if it were Michigan, Oregon,
in a true Rose Bowl.
Yeah, and it would be a bloodbath, because Oregon's not typical Pac-12. Oregon will come into the Big Ten ready to roll, ready to flex. They are tough in the trenches.
So you think Oregon would beat Michigan?
I just think it would be tougher. I just think it would be a much tougher game for Michigan than Washington.
And then Georgia, if they beat Alabama, they're going to probably play. If Florida State wins, probably Florida State. If not,
if Florida State were to beat Louisville in the ACC championship game.
So then would Texas, you think if Florida State loses to Louisville and Texas wins, does Texas jump in the 4th spot because of their win over Alabama? Or would Ohio State still be in the discussion?
There's a question. I don't know.
I have a hard time seeing the committee putting 2 from one conference in this year when
you
it's
don't
so
have to.
Balanced.
Yeah, when you don't have to. It's a great question, though. Ohio State was a hair from beating Michigan in Ann Arbor.
And a year ago, they almost beat Georgia.
I know. Ohio State's good. I mean, they have the best player in the country, in my opinion. You can go to the quarterback, Bo Nix or Penix, or the kid at LSU, the quarterback.
There's the playoff poll right now. So, yeah, you'll get that real Rose Bowl, Michigan, Washington, or maybe Michigan, Oregon, then Georgia, Florida State, or Georgia, maybe Ohio State, maybe Texas.
I wonder what Pac-12 fans would think of me saying that Oregon would be a much more difficult test for Michigan than Washington. The reason I say it is because Oregon's good they're really good up front on both sides. They're tough. It's Dan Lanning has kind of created a Big Ten team in the Pac-12. They're really physical. I watched Washington against USC. They steamrolled them, but USC scored on Washington pretty easily. Washington's not. They don't look as physical to me as Oregon does. But the one other thing I'd say is this would be the year for a 12-team playoff. This would be the year.
Are you going to watch? Now, does Iowa have a chance to muck this up a little bit?
No.
It will be over in the first.
They'll get suffocated. I don't know that it'll be
35-3 or something.
Yeah, I don't think it'll be a 70-3 game, but I just think Michigan will suffocate them. They'll suffocate Michigan's defense. Michigan's defense will suffocate that offense.
Well, Deacon Hill.
The thing that if I were a Nebraska fan, what I'd really study about Michigan is how deep they are in the defensive line. Sean, big men. I'm talking about interior D line. They're 12 deep. I mean, I was watching them play Maryland, and I was watching this guy named Good, Goode, and I thought, man, that guy's good. He didn't even play against Ohio State. I mean, they just bring waves of big men.
And that's why it was when you did all conference voting, like to Michigan guys are hard
because they don't have stats.
They kept their play counts down.
Right.
I mean, their starters, when you go back, they probably played half the snaps as not this year's Nebraska, but say last year's Nebraska.
They have to play them all
because they dominated.
They dominate, and also up front, they're rolling waves of guys in, so they don't get a chance to build stats.
That in the prime of Nebraska in the 90s, that was Nebraska. They only had to play their starters 2.5 quarters.
Yeah, and they were deep.
And then what happens? Your second and third team gets pretty good.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So it just builds on itself.
Where Nebraska can't ever play a second unit.
Right.
Right. It's so hard.
Right. Now, be careful there, because Nebraska did a lot of substitution, especially early in the season.
Oh, I'm talking like when you go full twos.
Yeah.
Like
you don't see that. Yeah.
You don't, I mean, it's just really hard where the program's at. All right. Let's take it to our final headline. Headline number 5. We're going to move over to basketball. Nebraska hoops looks to grab some attention. They'll take on Creighton. 7-0 Nebraska. Creighton has a loss right now to Colorado State. The Blue Jays come in ranked. The Huskers are trying to get their first back-to-back wins over the Blue Jays since the late 90s.
Is that right? And they'll have a good chance. I mean, Nebraska's a veteran team that, I mean, let's face it, Nebraska beat Creighton last year, as you just mentioned. I just like, first of all, it's going to be a really
intense crowd,
intense home court. I'll call it an advantage for Nebraska. Creighton does have that loss to Colorado State where they got pushed around. And Sean, they weren't in the game. I was listening to it on the radio because I was driving around on Thanksgiving, and they were down big at half. And I thought, okay, I'm going to listen to this game in the second half and just see how close Creighton gets. They never got close to Colorado State.
No, I watched it. And
yeah.
My sister, they go to Creighton games. My dad had tickets. My dad had basketball tickets to both Creighton and Nebraska. Mm-hmm. So he goes to both. And they get into watching those games too. And I mean, it's a weird divide. Omaha is a Creighton basketball town.
Weird.
Not even, I mean, like now the people that went to UNL that live in Omaha, they're obviously Husker fans. But if you did not attend the University of Nebraska and you live in Omaha, odds are you're cheering for Creighton.
Probably. So Nebraska, why would Nebraska have a chance? Because they're so balanced. They're older now. They're going to be tough to guard. What probably it comes down to is partly how well they handle Kalkbrenner inside. Fred was concerned about how many second chance opportunities Cal State Fullerton was getting on Sunday. And it kind of comes down to how well Nebraska defends. They've defended pretty well most of the year. I like this Nebraska team because I said they're older, as you mentioned, they're older, but also I really like the variety of scoring options. They have a lot of shooters. They have got a lot of guys that can score.
And this is the kind
4 or
of
5
game
guys
where Casey, Creighton's not an elite defense.
No, they're not.
So like Casey could get loose.
Could go off. Yeah. He could go off. And he's not, but here's the good thing for Nebraska. He doesn't have to. Bryce Williams can lead the team with 17 to 19 points. Rink Mask can lead the team like that. They have Casey could do it. Yeah, Lawrence. I mean, Jamarcus Lawrence is their point guard, and they're counting on him to run the show. But they have these scoring options that they have the depth and scoring options that Fred hasn't had. He hasn't had it. He hasn't had the depth like this at all.
And they're calling it. Is it a red out, kind of a no sit Sunday type deal?
Yeah, it'll be like that. I mean, I don't know what they're calling it, but you know how it's going to be over there, right over here.
It will be. I mean, let me tell you, there'll be Creighton fans in there.
Oh,
but
yeah.
It's hard to get tickets.
Yeah, it's wild.
Like Nebraska basketball lower bowl tickets are next to impossible to get your hands on as a season ticket holder. So you'll have to pay a premium on the secondary market. I'd imagine you'll see a lot of blue up in those 300s in the top.
Yeah. And it'll be loud. Creighton does not. I don't think they have the point guard they had the last time they came in here and won, which was Ryan Nemhart. He's gone. Nemhart, if you remember, Sean, I'm sure you were at the game, controlled the second half of the game. It was a virtuoso performance by Nemhart, I thought, from the point guard position. He controlled the tempo. He controlled the game. He didn't necessarily score a lot, but I was always struck by that. I don't know if they have the point guard to do that. But Nebraska doesn't. I mean, Nebraska's point guard situation
with Ulis,
he's not playing right. So they have Jamarcus Lawrence playing point guard for the first time, and it's been pretty good. I mean, he hasn't turned the ball over in the last 3 games, I don't think.
But Mack is a phenomenal coach.
Oh God, he's a good coach. Yeah, they have their system. I imagine this game will be very tight, and I would say almost too close to call. I mean, I think it's going to be that type of game.
Yeah, it's going to be a great Sunday down here. And what a weekend. You got Nebraska volleyball in the NCAA tournament Friday, Saturday. Yep. You got Nebraska basketball versus Creighton on Sunday.
Yeah,
so
big.
A lot to keep engaged with. And check out HuskerOnline.com. We'll have great coverage of volleyball by Nebraska Sports Writer of the Year finalist Abby Barmore, along with Steve Sipple, by the way, both final. Congratulations, Sip.
Yeah, how about Abby?
Abby, though, finalist for Sports Writer of the Year. Follow her work. She covers Nebraska volleyball for us and does an outstanding job. And then Robin, who does his he's the dean, the veteran of Nebraska basketball beat writers.
He's plugged in more than anybody. Let's just say it.
He will have elite coverage, and you'll be tagging along with Robin. Won't you?
I think I'll be with Rob. Yeah, I'll definitely be at the game.
it's like during football season, Robin stays out of our way, but
Mhm.
during basketball season, we stay out of Robin's way.
Yeah, and I'll go. I don't, Robin writes a lot. I don't know that I'd rip a column off right afterwards, but I need to see it because I'm going to be writing columns about him as we go. Because I think Nebraska's going to be pretty good, Sean. I think it's a team that can sustain and be a team that is on the bubble and maybe makes the NCAA tournament. I think that's
if they
what
win this game, they could be ranked next week.
Right.
I mean, that's what it means.
Yeah, they're gonna. I think we're in for an exciting winner.
And then Michigan State comes into town.
Right.
They jump in. They have that little.
Minnesota. They have Minnesota.
Well, Minnesota on the road, then Michigan State on Sunday.
Okay, and that'll be big too. Michigan State. Last I checked, they're 3-3. Now maybe they've played since then, but they're not off to a good start.
All right. Well, check out HuskerOnline.com. Once again, we got a great special for our YouTube viewers and listeners. Promo code NU1. You'll get 2 months for $1. That's 2 months for $1. Use promo code NU1 to get all the great coverage on HuskerOnline.com. Thanks for joining us on Husker Online Headlines. For Steve Sipple, I'm Sean Callahan. We'll see you next week.